And so I thought those were the things. If you made enough money, had enough education, had the right job and impressed people, and people thought you were a person of influence and power and they feared you, then you were considered a man. That's what culture says. But suffer from a learning disability that was undiagnosed that most men are afflicted with and don't know about, called ADT, ain't been taught. A real man teaches other men how to lead their family spiritually, how to love and serve others sacrificially, and how to leave an eternal legacy. You need some, I call inner circle brothers, who you can fall apart in front of. Counseling is the one thing that every man needs, but no man wants unless his wife threatens him or his court order. And this goes for the men out there. You're struggling, Joe Martin, being a dad because you're trying to be the perfect dad. Stop condemning yourself. Stop talking about the dad that you never had and now you can't be the dad you want to be. Here's the easiest way to become a great dad. Be an example, not an excuse.
Well, welcome everyone to the Evolving Man podcast. I'm the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alan DeMonso. You know, almost every man wants to be a great husband, an awesome father, and a successful provider for his family. But most men are secretly frustrated or afraid of failing in their role as the family leader. And because deep down inside, most of us don't know how to be the men we are desiring to be. And because more than likely, we didn't have the right man in the home to teach us. Now, before we get into any more of this, I just want to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform so you can stay updated on our latest content while helping me grow the Awakened Man message. And with that, I want to say I'm so grateful for your listening to today's podcast.
Today's man knows who he is, where he stands, and what he aspires to become. Solid in his convictions, owner of his destiny, ever evolving into husbands and fathers our wives and children expect and deserve. We are the masters of our life and the leaders of our homes and community. Welcome to the movement. Stay strong, my brother.
So as you know, gentlemen, customary, I'd like to start off by asking a couple of questions just to help us set the stage for today's talk. The first one I have for you is, are you paralyzed from past mistakes or fear of the future? And are you willing to fight for your marriage, your family, and your brothers? If you answered yes to either of those questions, then buckle down the hatches. My guest today is a leader in transforming the lives of men, guiding them to what matters most in their lives. So allow me to introduce Dr. Joe Martin. Dr. Joe Martin is an award-winning, internationally known speaker, author, professor, and certified man builder. He's co-authored or authored more than 9 books, including Man Accomplished, Are You the Man, and The Real Man Spiritual Leader Blueprint. He's also the host of the #1 rated Christian podcast for men and with more than 1.9 million downloads. So this is a gentleman that knows what he's talking about. And he's interviewed more than 475 men from all around the world, from company presidents to prison inmates. It's great to have you on the show today, Dr. Joe. How are things?
Alan, I'm doing fantastic. And thank you, man, for inviting me to be on your show. I consider it an honor and a privilege.
Yes, it's definitely my privilege as well, seeing the great work that you're doing. So, you know, Dr. Joe, one of the things that I do in my men's work is that we talk to every man about having their hero's quest or their hero's journey. And now I know you can summarize it all in one sentence. So I wondered if you could share with us what that sentence is and a bit about what your hero's journey has led you to founding Real Men Connect.
Yeah, my hero's journey, like you said, in one sentence is I went from rags to riches to ruin to redemption. And the redemption part of my life right now is me doing Real Men Connect, our men's organization where we help Christian men win at what matters most to them. But my rags part started just in the projects in Miami, in Liberty City, in a place called Liberty City. For those who are not familiar with that area of Miami, if they think of the video game Grand Theft Auto, then they probably heard of Liberty City. Or if they're old like me, over the age of 50, they've heard of a rap group called 2 Live Crew, then they've heard of Liberty City. But I grew up in abject poverty, teenage mother, unwed. Dad left when I was 2. My mom had 2 kids by the time she was 17. And we had it rough. There was alcoholism, addiction, abuse, both physical and sexual in my family. And it was very devastating, but that was the rags part. And I'm sparing you a lot of the details because we got a lot we can cover on the show today. But the richest part wasn't that I was wealthy, but considering where I started and where I ended up, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, graduated early at the top of my class at the age of 20, bought my first home when I was a senior in college, moved my mom out of the projects at the age of 21. Started my first business at the age of 22, a clothing store, became the youngest professor ever hired to teach in the state of Florida at the age of 24, worked for the Florida governor's office at the age of 26, had my doctorate degree by the time I reached the age of 28, had written 2 books at that time, Alan, by the time I reached the age of 30. And so I wasn't wealthy, but considering where I started, and my mom never even finished high school, and I was the first person in my family to finish high school, you would consider me having it all, rich. And I was married with a young son at the time. So life had gotten any better. So I went from rags to riches, but then I went to ruined because I ended up ruining that marriage, a 16-year marriage due to my porn and sex addiction. I had numerous adulterous affairs on my wife, too many to count, but our marriage couldn't sustain that. Even though I tried to fight for the marriage, it was just asking too much of her, who we were pretty much high school sweethearts. And so it was hard for her to overcome that. And so I've pretty much lost everything, my health, my wealth. The only thing I had left by the grace of God was I had joint custody of my son. And that was the ruined part. I thought my life was over. And now I'm just a cautionary tale of how you can have it all and blow it. Please don't be this guy. Don't do me. Don't do what I've done. And I was going to be content with just kind of fading off into the sunset. So I had it all by the age of 30, lost all by the age of 40. And then God redeemed me when he brought a man into my life who mentored and coached me and discipled me. And it changed everything. And so I was now feeling joy again. I just didn't have a lot, but I had joy again back in my heart. But I didn't know that the seed that man planted was going to be Real Men Connect, because his request to me, one request, he didn't say I had to pay him back or anything. He had 8 kids, was married, and took me under his wing and taught me how to be a husband and father, even though I was a single dad. And I asked him, how can I repay you? He said, Joe, just one thing I want you to do for me. I said, what's that? He said, go make disciples. He said, what I did for you, I want you to do for others. Now, he had no idea, Alan, I was going to launch a worldwide ministry and launch a podcast, reaching now over, you mentioned 1.9, it's now over 2.3 million people out there with our podcast, and interview now over 600 guests on our show. And then launching a membership, a community of brotherhood of men, of hundreds of men who now we do life together. I mean, every one of these men, I know them personally and their families, and we all know each other. And we've built a brotherhood community where we're discipling men to win at what matters most. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Well, that is so powerful, Joe. I can't believe when you talk about, coming from abject poverty, and yes, it may not be the riches that we consider, but the abundance mindset and what you were able to do for your family and for yourself is just incredible. And then the other part that I think was so powerful as well is, when the marriage loss, because it's very similar to my story of losing my first marriage, and through infidelity and losing things and not really understanding how to be a real man. And that's the next question I want to ask you is what would be your definition of what a real man is today?
Well, I try to make sure that I don't plagiarize, because I can't define manhood without looking at the real man. I don't have a definition for what a real man. What I do is I have a model and a template of who I look to as what a real man is, and pretty much say, okay, that's the kind of man I want to be. And so I figure if you're going to start anywhere looking at, quote, a real man, why not look at the perfect man to me, which was Jesus Christ? Mm-hmm. And whether people believe or not believe, that's not even the issue. The truth is he did live. He was on this earth, and we are still living based on his impact. And there are people who are giving their lives for him. And so to me, if I'm going to look at any man, it's going to be the definition of a real man is Jesus Christ. So let's break that down. So what was so great about Jesus? What made him such a real man? Now, ironically, it doesn't mirror the culture of what we consider what a real man is. Because looking at Jesus's life, well, first of all, let me tell you what I thought a man was. Mm-hmm. I thought a man was what I call, Alan, the Asians, that a man is defined by, one, his occupation, one of the Asians. He's defined by his compensation, how much he makes. He's defined by his education, how smart, not just talking about a formal education, how intelligent he is, how much he knows, and people go to him for wisdom and information. That defines a man, I thought. Education, reputation, how many people know him, like him, follow him? How many people look, how many likes does he get on his Facebook page? Social media, is he dominating in Facebook? How many views does he get? How many downloads does he get of his podcast? Looking at reputation as a definition, as well as intimidation, his strength, how he get men to fear him, and how he can wield his influence and people bow down because he is feared by people, even in his own home. His family's walking on eggshells. His wife looks at him and says, don't upset dad. Don't upset your dad. And so I thought those were the things. If you made enough money, had enough education, had the right job and impressed people, and people thought you were a person of influence and power and they feared you, then you were considered a man. That's what culture says, because that's what we aim for. But Jesus was totally different from that. Jesus, to me, was four things. Jesus didn't follow the Asians, but four things that I noticed about Jesus' life. Number one, he led his family spiritually. Now, we're not talking about his kids. Jesus didn't have any children. But what I'm talking about that Jesus did, when I say he led his family spiritually, your family is whoever you come home to, whoever sees you the most, whoever is dependent on you. And he had, not only was his mom, his dad and his siblings, but he had disciples who depended on him, and he led them, his family, spiritually. So he didn't just sit back and let life happen. He rejected passivity. And he says, no, I'm going to proactively lead my family well. I'm going to have them model me and watch what I do. That's what I want to do. So he led his family spiritually. Number two, I think a real man looking at Jesus is that he loves and serves others sacrificially. He takes care of his responsibilities. He put other people's needs before his own. And that doesn't mean he is a martyr and he neglects himself, but no, he looks at others as being more important than he is. He says, love goes first. I'll go first. I'll forgive first. I'll serve first. I'll support first. I'm going to look and take care of you first before I meet my own needs. He loves and serves others sacrificially. That's not what we taught in society, what a real man is. And then the third thing is that he leaves an eternal legacy. We talk about riches and abundance. A lot of times in society, we're told that we should be building up generational wealth for our family, so our children don't have to work, which is a great objective, a great thing to do. But you can't just leave generational wealth, because you're gone, and guess what? Money can be spent, and it can be squandered, it can be wasted, it can be multiplied, but it can come and go. But guess what will never leave? Your eternal legacy of faith, or what people remember about you. I'll give you a good example. We use it from the Bible, Adam and Abraham. When you think of the word Adam, you think of something. Something comes to mind. That's his legacy. Whatever you think of Adam, of the man Adam, that's his legacy. We don't know how much money Adam left behind for his kids. And you look at Abraham. We heard that Abraham was a wealthy man. We don't know how much he left behind. But when we think of Abraham, we don't think wealth. We think father of faith. So you got Abraham, father of faith, and then we got Adam, screwed it up for every man living today. He failed miserably. But you know what? That's not even fair, Alan, because I'm sure that Adam was more than his failure eating that fruit.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure, and we know Abraham wasn't a perfect man. He had a lot of issues. Sometimes he lacked courage, but we don't remember that about him. And so Jesus, what do we remember about Jesus? That he loved the world so much that he gave his life for those to reconcile them back to the Father. And so we look at Jesus' life. He leaves a legacy of faith. So real man, I should be not just taking care of my kids, but I'm implanting something in my kids that will be remembered by my kids' kids and my kids' 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 kids. That when they talk about Joe Martin, I never met this man, but he had to be a great man because everybody keeps talking about him. That's why I write the books. That's why I record the videos, because I'm trying to leave a lasting legacy. And here's the fourth thing. And the reason why we struggle with manhood today is what Jesus did, and he told us to do, and we don't do it. He did it, and he told and commanded us to do it. And that is, a real man teaches other men how to lead their family spiritually, how to love and serve others sacrificially, and how to leave an eternal legacy. Jesus' last words when he left, not talking about when he got crucified, he came back. But when he left for the last time, he says, when I come back again, it's going to be on and popping because everything's going to break loose when I come back the second time. But he told him his last words, go make disciples, not go make more money, go get more degrees, go build a bigger reputation, go intimidate a lot of people. He says, no, go make disciples. In other words, teaching them to observe and obey what you've seen me do. I taught you how to pray. I taught you how to forgive. I taught you how to serve. I taught you how to encourage. I taught you how to mourn with those who are losing something. I taught you how to rejoice with those who are celebrating something. Do what you saw me do. Go do that. And so to me, I can't tell you what I think a real man is. All I can point you to is the real man and who I'm modeling and who I'm teaching others to model.
I love that. That is so perfect. That is so perfect. And you know what my takeaway from what you were just saying there is really, it's that transition from the external pieces that we think make us up of who we are as men to really understanding that it's all within. It's not just the journey from here to here, right, but it's from here into here, to truly knowing that we embody all of these things and need to wake up and really follow the right leader.
You know what I like about that definition of looking at Jesus as a real man? None of that requires being wealthy. Because, you know, we work really, really hard because we want to, quote, provide for our families. And we will kill ourselves to work because and then we don't spend time with our kids or with our wives. And we say, I'm trying to do this all for you, but they never see us. And Jesus even when you follow Jesus' life, he was telling even Martha and Mary, you know, when Mary was complaining about Martha, you know, Martha was complaining that Mary wasn't doing enough. And just slow down, Martha. Mary is doing the most important thing. Mm-hmm. She's enjoying being in my presence. Where you're trying to work, slow down. And so the things that Jesus requires us does not require a lot of talent. It doesn't require a lot of money. What it requires is intentionality. That's what and being mindful of doing what he's asking us to do. And that's why he says, go make disciples, because some men are going to need help in how to do this, how to love your wives, how to disciple your children, how to lead your family well, how to represent me to a world that doesn't know me and may be resistant towards me. He wants us to teach other people how to do that.
100%. Love that. So the next question I have for you is, what are the 5 critical things men need to succeed?
Oh man, you're talking about what our foundation, what our ministry is built on. And again, you're gonna say, Joe, you have no originality. I stole this from Jesus. Okay. Again, I'm stealing there. I confess, I'm plagiarizing. I'm stealing everything from God's word, and I'm watching Jesus. And I'll tell you how it came about, and I'll give you the 5 things. Sure. I told you that I ruined a marriage because of my addiction. Alan, what I left out is I went through 7 years of recovery. 7 years of recovery in SAA groups, Celebrate Recovery. And I didn't need to be in that long. I enjoyed it. Because once you get into an environment like that, where men are being authentic and real and telling you about the struggles, you're like, wow, this is cool. Because you feel freedom in an environment, because you notice that most places, they don't talk that honestly about what they're struggling with. And I went through 3 years of counseling, to understand that porn in women weren't the problem. Is why I was choosing porn in women to medicate. Mm-hmm. And so I had to go to counseling to look back at my past. The abuse had something to do with that. The abandonment of my dad had something to do with that. My mom dealing with her demons and her depression had something to do with that. And I had to go digging. Now I say all of that because I would get asked on radio shows and podcasts, Joe, you've been now walking in sexual integrity and sexual purity now for going on 17 years. Earlier February this year was 17 years of sobriety. And everybody wants to know how you did it. And I told him it was 5 things, but I didn't know that I stole these things from the Bible. I didn't have a clue until I noticed that men who had their comeback stories, like you, Alan, and me, we all were saying the same thing with the same 5 things. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. If we're all saying the same thing, then we all stole this. We didn't come up with this. We weren't that smart. We're pulling it. It took me years to kind of figure it out, but I found out that we're all doing the same thing. And here it is, the 5 things. 1, that we have to have a personal, intimate relationship with Christ. Now, I'm gonna even go to the person out there who may not even be a believer.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say, well, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in, okay, that's fine. Let me substitute it with something else. Okay. You got to believe in something bigger than you.
Yeah.
It's got to be bigger than you. You don't believe in the God and Jesus I'm talking about. It's got to be, you can't be it. It's got to be something bigger. You didn't make you. You didn't create you. You didn't create all of this. There's something bigger than us. I believe God is real. And I believe Jesus came to die for my sins. So you got to have an intimate relationship with your creator, not religion. I'm talking about a relationship that he's as real as your wife or your children, that you can go to him naked and unashamed to pour your heart out and know what's on his heart, to know what you can do to be closer. No different if you were building a relationship with your wife. You want to know her heart. You want to commune with her. You want to talk to her. You want to listen to her. You got to listen to God. So you got to have a personal, intimate relationship with Christ. Any man who's written a comeback story, I guarantee you, they got that component.
Yep.
Here's the second one. And people are like, how did he know this? No, because we're all men. We ain't come up with this stuff. It works. Here's number two. You can't do life by yourself. You need to be in a community of other men. I would hope it'll be men who have the same agenda that you have. They want to be better husbands. They want to be better fathers. They want to spiritually lead their families. They want to leave a legacy. But I don't even care if it's a bowling league. If you want to be a 300 bowler, you need to be hanging around other bowlers. You got to be in community with other men, because a man is only as strong as the number of stronger men he has in his life. How can I get out of a hole that I'm in? I need help to get out of that hole. One, I need to stop digging, number one. And then I need to scream for help. Is anybody up there? Can anybody help me? A man is only as strong as his team. Think practical. If you've ever lifted weights, you can lift more weight with more spotters than you can by yourself. Who's helping you lift the weights of life, of dealing with marriage, dealing with parenting, dealing with what's going on in the world? Are you trying to carry that weight all by yourself? Jesus didn't even do that. First of all, Jesus had a personal relation with the Father. Jesus had a community of brothers called disciples who he handpicked. And he even had 75 other people following him. But he picked 12 to do life with. And here's the funny thing about it. Jesus didn't even need them, but he chose them because he was sending us a message. You can't do this by yourself. The third thing. So every man you see who has written a successful comeback story, trust me, he did not do it by himself. He had help. Now, he may not tell you who the help was, but he had help. Now, in that, even when having a community, the third thing, you need some, I call inner circle brothers who you can fall apart in front of. See, you can have a team, like men, you could be on a football team, and these are brothers, but we're going to spend more time, if we're the quarterback, we're spending more time with the linemen or the wide receivers or the running back. We're not hanging out with the defensive team. There's going to be people who you can tell even more to in your inner circle. Jesus had that too. And I missed it before. I didn't see it until I went back to the word. Jesus had 3 brothers, 3 men who he spent more time with than the other 9, Peter, James, and John. Now, since I mentioned to you, you go back and read in the scriptures, you'll see, when does he mention Peter, James, and John specifically? When Jesus was at his highest moment, Mount Transfiguration, when he was doing miracles, and when he was at his lowest moment in the Garden of Gethsemane. It wasn't the other 9 with him. It was those 3. But he was with the other 9 as a group, but he had those 3 that he spent most of his time with. And he would say things like this to Peter, James, and John. Don't tell anyone that what I just told you. Don't tell anyone, not yet. Doesn't that sound like a secret, Alan? Keep this secret. Now, that means, well, Jesus, you picked the other 9. Why aren't you telling them? He's trying to give us an example. You're going to have a team, but you're going to need some go-to guys within the team that you could tell them anything, and they're not going to lose respect for you. They're not going to judge you or condemn you. I guarantee you, every man has written a comeback story, had at least 1 or 2 or 3 brothers he could tell the most god-awful thing to, and that brother still stood by his side. That's the one, if you get sent to jail, you calling him first.
Absolutely.
You ain't calling your pastor, because you'd be embarrassed to call your pastor, but your pastor's on your team. But you'll call that brother at 2 a.m, at 3 a.m. Every man should have. That's the third critical component. Here's the fourth. And I don't know why we haven't picked up on this yet, Alan. Every man needs a coach, a mentor, somebody pouring into his life. And the reason why I say I'm surprised we haven't figured this out even as men is because we love sports. Tell me one, male or female, tell me one champion in any sport. I don't care if it's a team sport. I don't care if it's an individual sport who has ever won a world championship or a trophy or a prize without a coach. Name me one. I'll wait. Name me one. I just watched the Winter Olympics. No one has ever achieved anything great without a coach. Now, let's look at the Bible. Now, first of all, Jesus was the perfect man. There was nobody above him but God. So guess who he went to as his coach? God. And he even said it and told us and got him in trouble. He says, I only say and do what I hear the Father say and do. And he got in trouble for that because they said, how does this man know he could say that about God? Because he came from God. He was God in human flesh. He had a relationship with God. Well, guess what? We're not perfect. So we look to the Bible, and guess what? Timothy had Paul. Elisha had Elijah. Moses had Jethro, his father-in-law. Joshua had Moses. Lot had Abraham. Peter had Jesus. David had Nathan. You see a trend going on here? We can't, I wish I could take credit for that. I'm looking at this. This is so obvious. And so the question I ask to the men who want to be champion husbands, champion fathers, champion leaders, champion Christians, champion business owners, who's your coach? Well, Joe, I don't really have one. Then that means either you're deceived, you're naive, or you're arrogant, because nobody's ever done it without one. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player on the planet, still had Phil Jackson. And then when it came to his community, he still had Scottie Pippen and B.J. Armstrong and Horace Grant. He still had these guys. Michael Jordan, you want to be the Michael Jordan of your home. How are you going to do it without a coach? He couldn't do it without a coach. And he's the GOAT. Tom Brady, best of all time as a quarterback. You ever notice that when you ask him about, is he the GOAT? He says, I wouldn't be here without what? My linemen. The wide receivers who caught my passes. I can't throw it and catch it. His wife even told you that when they lost the Super Bowl. Tom can't throw it and catch it at the same time.
Exactly.
Somebody has to catch it. So we got the coach. That's the fourth. And here's the fifth component. This is where I kind of say, God, I don't know about this one. God said, I know it helped me and it helped millions of men out there write their comeback story. But Jesus didn't have this. Counseling. Every man needs counseling. Counseling is the one thing that every man needs, but no man wants unless his wife threatens him or his court order. But we all need it. So this is where my pushback came. I said, okay, now, God, I'm seeing Jesus had all these things, but Jesus didn't have counseling. Jesus didn't get counseling. And then God's led me to the word. What did my son tell the disciples why he had to leave? Well, I said, well, he's told the disciples that he said, I must leave because they didn't want him to leave. He says, because I need to send you another, a helper, to lead and guide you in truth, a comforter, a guide. Wait for it, Alan, a counselor, to lead and guide you in all truth. I said, well, God, I see that, but that's not the same as counseling. The counselor is for spiritual truth. So we don't need to depend on a pastor or a priest to teach us your word. But what does that got to do with counseling? He says, Jesus gave us the Holy Spirit. Jesus didn't need counseling because he was without sin. You have sin. And you got to deal with the root of your sin, of why you're sinning. So you don't just go to any counselor. You go to counselors who are being led by the counselor, the Holy Spirit, who will lead you and guide you dealing with your emotional trauma, your pain, and your past. So those are the 5 key components. And I haven't met a man yet who's one of my mentors, or because I got 6 mentors, 6 coaches in my life, and not one of them are missing any of those components. Not one. And I haven't met a man yet who's written a comeback story who has missed any of those components. So those are the 5 critical things.
Right on. Absolutely. There's no way in life that we get through life without those 5 components. And whether we like to admit it or not, we are led by a higher power. And whether you're not comfortable hearing about JC and the Brothers 12 and you need something else, then whatever it is for you, man, then that's what you need to do. But we need to understand that we're not here to do it by ourselves. You know, I always say that life's a do-it-yourself project. That doesn't mean you do it by yourself. It means you do it for yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
You know? Like you got to get in there and figure that stuff out. That is just awesome. I love that. And the other thing the takeaway I had is this, I just love I'm going to steal Jim Rohn's idea here of, we are the average of the 5 closest people in our lives, right?
5 people we hang around.
And
Absolutely.
Who are we and how are we doing that? And if, the example of Jesus and his 3 is what really reminds me of how we got to really be aware of what's going on around us. And are we awake enough to recognize that and make the change?
Alan, can I also make another point about the 3 that really blew my mind?
Sure.
Because it didn't make any sense to me. I said, okay, Jesus had 3 people in his inner circle, and we need people in our inner circle. This, I didn't see it. I said, okay, Jesus had 3, Peter, James, and John. I said, but God, isn't it true that they abandoned him? Other than John, Peter denied him. They left him. When he asked them to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus was at his lowest and asked them to pray for him, he asked them to pray 3 times and they fell asleep. I said, God, that don't make sense to me. Why are you telling us we need 3 people in our lives, at least some inner circle brothers, but all they're going to do is fail us? Isn't that a reason why we don't want to trust these guys? But that's not true. The reason why because they could have easily left that out of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Why show these men's failure in his inner circle? Here's why. Because of Jesus' response to them. Because guess what? He restored Peter and James, and he said, John is who I dearly love. And they went on to be some of his greatest disciples. And what is the lesson in this that I learned in this, and I want the men out there to hear this clearly. Stop writing off men because they've failed you. You got to extend some grace and mercy. Nobody's perfect. Even your closest friends are going to let you down sometime. Alan, I even tell our guys when they come in, I am going to let you down. But just extend me some grace and mercy when I apologize. And I ask you for forgiveness. I'm not doing it intentionally. I'm just human. I'm flawed. But my heart is, I love you and I'm going to do the best I can. Don't you want your wife to forgive you when you screw up? So I can't hold these men in my inner circle to such a standard that now, Alan, I'm no longer talking to you because you got me mad on last Friday. Now we're not talking for the next 5 years because of what Alan did on last Friday. How am I going to ruin a 20-year relationship over 5 minutes of something that happened? And sometimes we as men can have unrealistic expectations of our friends. And that's why we quote, do life alone. Because you know what, Alan, I did trust somebody and he betrayed my trust. And man, I told him in secret and he told his wife. And now I'm no longer. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Give the guy some grace and some mercy. He ain't trying to hurt you. You can't now understand. You can't trust everybody, but you want to trust somebody. And even if somebody you trust is going to let you down, extend the same type of grace and mercy to them you want extended to you when you screw up, because you are going to screw up.
100%.
And I learned that. And I was like, God, thank you for revealing that to me and seeing that. That's why they didn't take that out of the Bible. So we can extend grace and mercy even to our friends.
Absolutely. And that's what true, listening to that part of that story, reminding me of it, is that it's really about brotherhood.
Yeah.
It's about that connection, right? And if we truly looked in the mirror, we'd recognize the person looking back at us has let us down more times than our brothers. Way more times, right?
More times than they have. I know that's right.
Yeah. So we, cut ourselves and them some slack.
Cut them some slack, man.
Let's do that, right? Listen, I want to talk a little bit about fathers now, and what you would recommend for fathers to be able to effectively speak to their children, especially with teenagers. And then today, with such a digital society and everyone got their head down and thumb scrolling, what would you recommend for fathers today?
Well, I know we don't have a lot of time on the show, and I'm going to make this super, super, super simple. And I hope they don't get mad at me because I'm making this super simple. Because I had to go through the battle of, I never had a dad to show me how to be a dad. So I'm doing it by trial and error. And I was getting very, very frustrated of being a dad. And I mean, I was doing good. I was trying to do the right thing. And it seemed like I'm always screwing it up because I call it, I was suffering from a learning disability that was undiagnosed that most men are afflicted with and don't know about, called ABT, ain't been taught. And so here I am making these mistakes with my young son, and I don't know what's going on. And he was around 5, Alan, when I got to the point. I'm like, God, I just threw my hands up in there. I said, God, I'm done. How do you get done with fatherhood? I said, God, I'm done. I said, I'm screwing up this kid. I said, I'm trying to be a better dad than my dad, which is problem number one. Because if my dad was a level 3 and I'm trying to be better than my dad, a 4 is better than my dad. That's not helping my son. I'm using the wrong standard. And so I'm saying, God, I can't do this. And this is what I would offer to men. I said, God, I can't do this. This is too hard. I'm making too many mistakes. And I said, I'm blowing it. He says, perfect. Now you're ready to be a dad. I'm like, what? He says, no, see, you're struggling. And this goes for the men out there. You're struggling, Joe Martin, being a dad because you're trying to be the perfect dad. There's only one perfect father, and you ain't it. Yeah. It's me. But listen to me. Don't be discouraged. I'm glad you're here now. So now you will listen to me. You're trying to be the perfect dad and you're not, and you won't ever be. But listen to me, my son. You're the perfect dad I chose for this boy. What? God, I don't get it. How can you say that I'm the perfect father you chose for him? But God, he said, why do you think you're not the perfect dad I chose for him? God, because I make so many mistakes. Yeah. Perfect. You're the perfect man to show him how a real man responds to his mistakes. But God, he's got too many questions that I don't have answers for. Perfect. You're the perfect man to show him where you go to get the answers and who you get the answers from. But God, I don't know what I'm doing. Perfect. You're the perfect man to show him where you learn how to do it and how you are being discipled and how you're being mentored and how you're being coached. I said, oh, now I'm starting to get it. God, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to even be successful. I just have to be faithful. Yes. Mm-hmm. So here's my simple advice to men out there who are struggling to be good dads. Stop beating yourself up. Stop putting yourself down. Stop condemning yourself. Stop talking about the dad that you never had and now you can't be the dad you want to be. Here's the easiest way to become a great dad. Be an example, not an excuse. That's it. Be an example. It finally hit me when my son was 12 years old and I was a single dad. And I went to I was at God. I said, God, how can I be a better father to my son, Kendall? I said, you brought some men in my life and I see these men and they're trying to teach me, but God, it seems like I'll never be able to be like these men. They're great men of God. And I said, I'm trying my best and I'm having some success with this, but what can I do to do better? He said, stop striving and start abiding in me. He says, and I want you to tell your son this. And he told me something I'm going to share with your audience. And I said, God, I can't tell him that. He says, tell your son that. Now, for those out there listening, say, God speaks to Joe. Yeah, I ain't talking about an audible voice. He speaks to my heart. And I know it's God because I don't want to do half the stuff he's telling me. That's how I know it's God. See, I know it's the devil when it's to do something that's going to hurt people. And it's for selfish reason. Oh, I hear God clearly when God tells me to do something like, God, but I don't want to do that. But it's right. And it's good. But it's scary. And it requires courage and it requires faith. That's how I know it's God, because I don't want to do it. I'm too scared to do it, but I know it's the right thing to do, Alan. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those times. I said, God, I can't. He said, do you want to be a great dad or what? I said, God, you know I do. Then do what I'm asking you to do. So I went and got my son. He was 12 years old and he saw me kind of nervous. I said, Kendall, Daddy needs to talk to you. He said, you do? I said, yeah. I said, I got to tell you something. He said, what is it, Daddy? And he saw me fidgeting. And he's not used to seeing me nervous because I'm a public speaker. I speak on stages to thousands of people. He says, Daddy, you all right? I said, yeah, Kendall. He said, what's wrong? I said, I'm scared. Daddy, scared of what? I said, what? I got to tell you. He said, well, Daddy, now you scare me. What do you got to tell me? I said, well, Kendall, you know I speak to God, right? He said, yeah, Daddy, I know. And I said, and God speaks to my heart. And when God tells me to do something, 9 times out of 10, I don't want to do it, but I got to do it because he asked me to do it. I said, Kendall, here's one of those times he told me to do something that I really don't want to do. He said, Dad, what is it? He told me to tell you something. He said, Daddy, what's that? I took a deep breath. And this is for all your men out there, because I want you to do the same thing with your son or your daughter, especially if you got sons. I said, Kendall, and it started out slow, and then the Holy Spirit kicked in. I said, Kendall, God told me to tell you to do what you see me do. Watch me and speak the way you hear me speak. Serve the way you see me serve. Support others the way you see me support others. Then all of a sudden the Holy Spirit started kicking. I said, love women the way you see me love women. Kendall, humble yourself the way you see me humble myself. Kendall, seek forgiveness and ask for forgiveness and extend grace and mercy the way you see me do it. Allow yourself to watch what I allow myself to watch. Allow yourself to listen to what you see me listen to. Work with the same attitude that you see me work with. Respond to people the way you see me respond. Sacrifice the way you see me sacrifice. Love the way you see me love. Respond to your enemies the way I respond to my enemies. Kendall, what God told me to tell you was to be you, but do me. And I said, Kendall, that's what I was scared, because now once I've said it, I cannot ever take that back. He's turned 26 next month. And I still tell him, watch me, listen, follow. Screw up the way you see me screw up and fix it the way you see me fix it. Take responsibility the way I take responsibility. You don't have to think about it because you got a model right in front of you. Do you, be you, do me. I'm making my life open to you. So you never have to say, but I don't know how. Watch your dad.
Yeah.
Seek him the way you see me seek him. Pray the way you see me pray. Cover your family the way you see you cover my family. Lead your family the way you see me lead my family. Now, you know what he's told me? Because most guys say, wow, you told your son. What's your son response? You know what my son response was to all of that, Alan? Dad, I don't think I can ever be a husband or a father because I can't do it that way. He's saying I set the bar too high. And I said, no, Kendall, you're not going to just do it the way you see me do it. You're going to do it even better. He said, Dad, how can you say that? I said, but Kendall, have I been the perfect dad? He says, no. Have I made a lot of mistakes? He says, yes. I said, guess what? I've done a lot of good things too, right? I said, do all the good stuff you see me do. And guess what? Don't repeat the bad ones.
Yeah.
By default, you'll be better than me. But I've at least gave you a bar of what to do. And all you got to do is do what you see me do and don't do the bad stuff. You're going to be better than me. He said, Dad, I never thought about it that way. I said, it's by default. That's why you have to be faithful and not strive to be successful. Faithful always wins. Mm. And when we stand before God, Alan, he's not going to say, well done, my good and successful servant, but well done, my good and what? Faithful servant. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm going for. Faithfulness, not success anymore.
That is so powerful. Just so powerful, Joe. I just love hearing you talk about stuff. And we could probably go on for hours, but I want to be able to wrap us up with this one last question is if there was one thing that we talked of everything we've talked about, and maybe we haven't talked about it yet, but if there's one thing that you'd like our audience to take away with them, what would that be? Oh,
that would be easy for me. Because we did talk about it, but we didn't dive deep into it. Because to me, this is at the root of our problem as men, and it's our identity. We mentioned about how we define what a man is and what Jesus was. And so what it is, we as men define ourselves based on what we do, what we make, what people have said about us, our past, our pain, our trauma, our history, our daddy, our mama, our friends, our rejection, our relationship. We define ourselves by everything except for what God says about us. And so if I was going to give a parting word to them, I would share something that we share inside our organization and Real Men Connect. And it's our real man reality. And we even ask our men to memorize this, because I say it to myself every night when I go to bed. I can say it when I get up in the morning, because I'm reminding myself of who God says I am. I'm not even who I think I am, Alan. I don't even want to be who I think I am. Because sometimes my thinking can be stinking thinking sometimes.
Yep.
You're not good enough. You're not enough. Oh, yeah, you're stupid. If you ever see me in competitive stuff, you hear me call myself all kinds of stupid stuff. You're an idiot. God would never say that to me. So I'm only going to call myself what God says I am. So here's what I would tell the men out there, and I want them to listen to this if they don't hear anything else we've said in this whole show. This is what God says about you. This is our real men reality. You are powerful because God's Holy Spirit dwells within you. You are valuable to him because he sacrificed his only son just for you. So when God looks at you, he sees the righteousness of his son, Jesus Christ, not your sins. So regardless of what you did, to God, you are blameless. You should be unashamed because he considers you holy, set apart. This is your new born again identity in his son, Jesus Christ. So as God renews your mind according to his truth, not your past, not your parents, not your pain, not your trauma, not your bank account, not even your own thoughts. When he renews your minds according to his truth, he will grant you the grace to live, to love, and to lead righteously. May you believe that and receive that in your heart and let it transform your life.
Love it. What a great way to end the show today, Joe. That was outstanding. And we shed so much light on helping men connect with God, their families, and really ultimately themselves. And so what would be the best way for our guests to get a hold of you and reach you and join some of your programs?
Oh, that's easy. Just go to realmenconnect.com. And think about it. Real men, what do real men do? They connect. They connect to Christ. They connect to their community. They connect to their inner circle. They connect to their coaches and mentors, and they connect to counseling. realmenconnect.com. And if some message out there has resonated with some guy and he said, man, I wish I could talk to Dr. Joe personally, we even got something set up for you. If you go to realmenconnect.com/call, CALL, you can get on my schedule and we can talk even personally. You just got to find a slot that's open.
Yeah, for
But that's
sure.
realmenconnect.com/call. And you can talk to me personally. You don't just have to just hear me. You can speak to me.
That's outstanding. Well, I'll make sure all that information and more is in the show notes so people can get out there and reach and get a hold of you. Joe, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. It was powerful. Really appreciated the time we shared today.
My pleasure, Alan. Anytime, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Evolving Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.